Polls closed in Bolivia after the Bolivian Supreme Electoral Tribunal described the election day as calm as the South American country defines its political future. And in Venezuela, rejects U.S. military deployment in the Caribbean Sea and what the South American country describes as a misinformation machine. Hospitals in Gaza reported Sunday that at least 11 people, including 2 children, died of starvation and severe malnutrition in the last 24 hours. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Polls have closed in Bolivia and vote counting is underway after citizens went to the polls on Sunday to elect the nation's president and vice president, 130 National Assembly deputies and 30 senators. 7.9 million citizens are called to exercise the right to vote as of 7 a.m. local time in the more than 34,000 polling stations set up across the country. The electoral event, marked by tensions among progressive organizations, is attended by more than 3,500 observers from 19 national and international organizations. More than 369,000 Bolivian residents abroad turned to their embassies in 22 countries to exercise the right to vote. In Europe, for example, Bolivian citizens celebrate the democratic process in countries such as Spain, Germany, Italy and the Netherlands. Meanwhile, Colombia and Argentina also reported the participation of the Bolivian community to elect the new president, vice president and national legislators. Despite setbacks at some polling centers abroad, such as delays in setting up the polling stations, the day is reportedly proceeding normally. Meanwhile, Bolivians in Japan were the first to participate in the electoral process with a polling station for 307 registered voters. We stay in Bolivia, where the Supreme Electoral Tribunal has described the first half of the general elections on Sunday as calm. Bolivia's Supreme Electoral Tribunal President Oscar Teufel said elections were proceeding peacefully despite some incidents in some regions. He said citizens were exercising the right to vote responsibly and with civic awareness. Teufel recalled that at 9 p.m. local time, a press conference would be held to announce those elected by the people. By 9 p.m. local time on Sunday, a preliminary report on the elections results are expected to be released after 80% of the voting tallies are processed. The final elections results should be ready within 3 to 4 days, since the vote counting is done manually. To win the elections in the first round, candidates need an absolute majority or 40% of the votes, with at least a 10-point lead over the running-up. Failing that, a runoff election between the two candidates will take place on October 19. And Bolivian President Luis Arce exercised his right to vote in Sunday's general elections. President Arce called on citizens to take part in the electoral day, as the Bolivian president also highlighted the importance of Sunday's election to show the world the unity and democracy of the country. Likewise, President Arce said his administration would guarantee a peaceful transition.
Today we want to tell the nation that we will conduct a completely democratic process. In November, in accordance with the schedule set by the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, and as mandated by the Constitution, we will follow that schedule, comply with the Constitution, and go down in history as a government that fulfilled what the people commanded us to do in 2020. They demanded us to restore democracy. Not only have we restored it, but we have also preserved it. All of this will lead our country toward a democratic solution and a peaceful transition.
una salida democrática y un
Bolivia's former president Evo Morales exercised his right to vote in the country's general elections on Sunday. Morales cast his vote in the town of Villa 14, belonging to the municipality of Villa Tunari in the Chapare province of the department of Cochabamba, where he has his traditional political and union stronghold. The former president said his call to the Bolivian people is to vote new, claiming that without his presence on the presidential ballot, there is no candidate who represents the people of Bolivia. And presidential candidates in Bolivia went to their respective polling stations as well to cast their votes in the country's general elections. For example, all presidential candidates have already exercised the right to vote. Among them, the candidate for the Movement for Socialism, Eduardo del Castillo, the one for the Unity Bloc coalition, Samuel Doria Medina, also the representative for Autonomy for Bolivia, Sumate, Manfred Reyes Villa, and Rodrigo Paz Pereira for the Christian Democratic Party. Meanwhile, local authorities reported that the candidate for the Movement towards Socialism, Andrónico Rodriguez, was attacked while he was at the polling station to vote. Rodriguez's campaign manager, Guido Ceballos, was brutally beaten and hospitalized. Also, the candidate for the People's Force, Johnny Fernandez, was booed at a polling station in Santa Cruz. And also we stay in Bolivia, where the candidate for the Movement towards Socialism, Andrónico Rodriguez, made statements on the events of violence that occurred on election day. Andrónico indicated that they are isolated events that do not damage the general elections of the country. Let's listen.
That's a clear example that there are organized groups acting with premeditation, intolerant people. In my view, these are isolated groups because our people have been conducting themselves in an orderly fashion. It's unlikely they would be involved in detonating any kind of device. There are people here who have come from other municipalities, and we have evidence of that, and we have denounced that fact publicly. In any case, these are isolated groups, and those are isolated incidents. The important thing for us is that these elections are being held in a relatively normal atmosphere along the Cochabamba tropical region. And it is the people who have the last say, and voting is the way to express that will. And so far
And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Venezuela's Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez rejected the United States military deployment in the Caribbean Sea and what he describes as the Nazi-style disinformation machine. The head of the Bolivarian defense stated that his country is facing a battle between the truth and the lies created by Washington's warmongering media machine in reference to the U.S. allegations about the presence of drug cartels in the Caribbean Sea, specifically in Venezuelan territory. According to the government official, Washington ignores the United Nations report certifying that Venezuela is a country free of illicit crops and laboratories for processing them, and stressed that 90% of drug trafficking is carried out in the Pacific Ocean towards the United States.
War is built up progressively. Firstly, public opinion is created, which is what they're doing right now, with a strong positioning. Yesterday, they said they were going to carry out a deployment in the Caribbean Sea to fight the cartels. I asked the United States, we're going to carry out a deployment in the Caribbean Sea to fight the cartels. I asked the United States, aren't you going to deploy forces in the Pacific Ocean, where almost 90% of the drugs pass through to the United States? Is the Caribbean the problem? Is it Venezuela? Are the cartels then in Venezuela? Are the coca crops in Venezuela? I ask myself. It's just a narrative that they want to impose in order to attack Venezuela, by constructing lies to turn them into truths, in the best style of Goebbels, the head of the Nazi propaganda. It is the truth against the lie. They have a great communication apparatus to spread their lies and construct false positives. Anyone who wants to fabricate a lie can do so, and nothing happens, because there is no law. There is no international rule of law, because the international law is headless.
And in other news, the group of Friends in Defense of the United Nations Charter issued a communique condemning the latest United States threats against Venezuela, warning of the threat of the use of force in an attempt to undermine Venezuelan sovereignty and independence. Member states of the group noted with concern the reported intention of the government of the United States of America to initiate military actions in Latin America using the fight against drugs as an excuse for an open military intervention in the region. They reaffirmed their unwavering solidarity with Venezuela while rejecting in the strongest term any policy, including through covert or overt actions, as well as the vindication of anachronic doctrines that seek regime change. In this regard, the Venezuelan government thanked on Friday the support of the international organization. Precisely through a post on his Telegram account, Venezuelan Foreign Minister Iván Gil shared, "On behalf of President Nicolás Maduro, we extend our sincere gratitude to the group of Friends in Defense of the United Nations Charter for their solidarity with Venezuela and their steadfast rejection of U.S. military threats and the fabricated, unfounded narratives used to justify them." In Peru, the National Journalists Association rejected the recent amnesty law, arguing that it perpetuates impunity for those who committed human rights violations between 1980 and 2000. The Journalists Association said the law benefits members of the armed forces and the national police involved in these crimes that included the killing of many journalists, such as the martyrs of Ushuracay, Jaime Ayala, Hugo Bustillos, Melissa Alfaro, and Pedro Yauri. The association warned that with this law, the Peruvian state is moving away from justice and sending a disturbing message of tolerance towards crimes that should not go unpunished. The International Federation of Journalists, supported by the local unions, statement and call for justice. In Mexico, the 16th Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean came to a close. After 4 days of work, the closing ceremony brought together more than 1,000 women with the aim of building a roadmap to guarantee human rights. In addition, the conference agreements were submitted to the plenary for approval. In this regard, the Secretary for Women, Sita G. Hernandez, pointed out that the Tlatelolco commitment is a declaration of principles that Latin America and the Caribbean do not renounce the right to exist as a diverse, sovereign, solidarity-based, and deeply feminist region. And in Italy, large-scale fires have broken out in several areas of the south of the country. Local authorities reported that the fire brigades are still struggling to extinguish the flames and are trying to control the spread of the fire to other regions. They also warned that the fire could have lasting effects on health and the environment. The authorities declared a state of emergency in several southern areas due to the strong winds from the northwest to the southeast and from the northeast to the south. Flames and pollution could also affect all the region's municipalities. A magnitude 6 earthquake hit Indonesia's Sulawesi island Sunday, leaving at least 32 people injured. According to the Indonesian National Agency for Disaster Countermeasures, the quake was located at a depth of 10 kilometers, shook the Poso Regency, and was felt in the nearby areas. The agency also informed that the natural event caused significant material damage in the area and that the people was injured as well. 2 of them critically had been transferred to hospitals for treatment. There were no immediate reports of death, and Indonesia sits on the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire, a highly seismically active zone where different places on the Earth's crust meet and create a large number of earthquakes. And we have a second story coming up. Before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Fun shopping. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Hospitals in Gaza reported Sunday that at least 11 people, including 2 children, died of starvation and severe malnutrition in the last 24 hours. According to the enclave's health authorities, the humanitarian crisis is worsening due to the blockade imposed by Israel on humanitarian aid, which results in a shortage of food and medical supplies. On the other hand, the United Nations highlighted that between May 27th and August, at least 1,760 people were killed while searching for food. For his part, the Palestinian Ministry of Health informed that at least 61,900 people have been killed and more than 155,000 others wounded by the Israeli occupation forces since October 2023. The Israeli occupation force announced it will begin displacing Palestinian residents on Sunday from northern Gaza to the south, claiming the move is aimed at ensuring their safety. According to the occupation military, tents and other shelter equipment will be delivered starting Sunday through the Kerem Shalom crossing in southern Gaza, with the United Nations and relief agencies responsible for transfer after inspection by Israeli officials. The announcement comes as the Zionist regime prepares a new offensive to seize Gaza City, a plan that has triggered widespread alarms over the fate of 2.2 million residents already living under devastation. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warned that the relocation plan would only worsen the crisis, noting that no part of Gaza can be considered safe. And Israeli families of those held by the Palestinian resistance went on a general strike Sunday to pressure Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to prioritize the release of their loved ones. The strike was called by the Forum of Families of Hostages and Missing Persons, which reported blockades on major roads in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Demonstrators vowed to paralyze the country with the support of at least 70 local government authorities and nationally prestigious universities. The group also reported marches towards government buildings and military barracks to demand negotiations with the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas, while carrying banners with the faces of their family members. The U.S. State Department announced Saturday that it would stop issuing visas to children from Gaza in desperate need of medical care. According to media outlets, the decision comes after an online pressure campaign carried out by far-right influencer Laura Loomer, close to U.S. President Donald Trump and self-described as a proud Islamophobe. The influencer accused Palestinian children and their family members of shooting jihadi chants upon arriving in Houston and San Francisco for medical treatment last month. Muslim organizations in the United States described the decision as an extremely cruel gesture to prevent Palestinian children wounded by U.S. weapons from traveling to the United States to receive medical treatment. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For teleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.